Hello and welcome to this edition of Diaspora Central. I am Gil Ingles, and with me today, virtually from Washington, D.C., it is a man that has definitely bet on one person, has definitely bet on one thing that he knew was the right thing to do, was to pick up and go back to the motherland and do the things that he thought to be possible to be done at the motherland. Mr. Melvin Maxwell, welcome to Diaspora Central.
Oh, thank you, Gil, for this opportunity to come and sit and share with you.
Indeed, it's definitely a pleasure to have you here, and definitely an honor. One of the things about you, and I sometimes like to start this program with accolades, so I will do that right now. One of the things about you that to me was very, very important was the fact that you did not just see the need to be successful in America. You saw the need of you being successful also in Africa and help Africa move forward. And we know, and we know that that doesn't just happen. That comes from the way you were brought up. It comes from the way you were raised. It comes from some of the experiences you have lived, and those are some of the things that we want to talk about on this interview. Is that okay with you?
Most definitely.
All right. So let's kind of go ahead and get our viewers to understand and know exactly where is Mr. Melvin Maxwell from.
Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
Whoa.
Brooklyn all the way in the house, and raised by a single mother. My father left when I was 6 years old. Okay. I was a fifth child of six.
Okay. And what is the mother's name, not to cut you off?
My mother is Dolores Maxwell. My father's the late Clarence Webster Maxwell, okay. Who was in the Black Panthers and grew up in the context of revolution, okay, and movement throughout the city, and very conscious of our people. My mother would be considered the Mother Teresa of our projects that we grew up in. Okay. The Cooper Park projects. Mm-hmm. And she was always serving and helping. And I was her youngest at the time, and I was always by her side, whether it was washing seniors' clothes or taking care of sick and shut in or delivering food. Okay. So I grew up in a servant type context.
Got you. So from that point, I believe that gives you that end of always attempting to help those in most need.
Yes, most definitely. You know, even though I went wrong when I was a young man, I was in gangs, and I got in the Nation of Islam, and okay. then became a pastor later on in Christianity. Okay. So people call me a pastorpreneur.
Got you.
I'm still pastor here in Washington, D.C., as well as do business to advance and help people to lift them up.
Okay. What is the name of the church that you had in Washington, D.C.?
I'm the pastor of the East Friendship Baptist Church in the East Side, one of the most difficult areas of D.C., where I love pastoring. We are a community church making a world of difference. And so we deploy missions around the world, okay. And we do a lot of work 24/7 around the clock. I'm taking care of people, empowering and equipping them to be the best version of themselves.
Right. And that's definitely one of those things very necessary right now for our community, because very few of us do much of that. As a matter of fact, I mean, mainstream media sometimes portrays very little of those type of roles.
That's right.
Indeed. Now, you mentioned at some point during your youth going astray or in a tangent in a way. And looks like you got corrected once you joined the nation.
No, the correction happened when I got arrested at 13 years old. Okay. And my mother wept so bitterly about me being arrested because she had so much hope. I was an A student all through my time, and I was doing a lot of great things, but I still was hanging with some of the wrong people. Right. But seeing my mother weep and knowing that, you know, my mission was to get her out of the projects and to take care of my baby brother who was born when I was 13 as well. Right. And try to give a better life since we didn't have a father, and it was 6 of us.
Okay. So give us the name of your siblings also.
The oldest is Clarence, Clarence Maxwell, Clarence Thomas, and then there's Rodney James. Then my sister is in between us, Eileen Hardy Maxwell, and then my brother Warren, and then myself. And then my baby brother, we call him Tutu, is Marvin. He has a different father from us, but we all blood. And we all raised together. And our mother was a force to reckon with. And then, you know, she disciplined us in ways that was there was no joke. To try to save our lives, she was no joke. Right. She was kind of like a tomboy when she was growing up, and so she was physical. So you over her back, she was a little shorter than me, but she would put on your chest and say, I rule this place.
There you go. She was the queen in the building.
Yeah, she was definitely the queen.
Indeed. And that forged the character in all of you guys also.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Now, while going to school, you mentioned also being a good student. Aside from your mother, who was a very strong woman, and I'm sure that she made education something that you guys had to definitely hold on to. Were there also any other teachers? What schools did you go to, actually, if you can go back to elementary school?
Public school 110, then junior high school 126. I didn't see black male teacher till I got into junior high school in the eighth and ninth grade. Mr. Jackson was a science teacher. I love science and mathematics. I'm a trained engineer as well, and so he kind of excited me about the chemical charts, in which I'm now dealing with in minerals. And I loved. Then I went to Murray Bertram High School for business careers in Manhattan near Wall Street. And was specializing in accounting and investments. And so my high school was an incubator it was a magnet school, and it was an incubator for learning how to do business. We learned everything from investments, accounting, to doing books, and to contract law and all that stuff. Yeah. And then I later went into the Air Force and studied contracting. And so I became a contract negotiator, a contract administrator, and then I opened my business bidding contracts around the world.
Got you. Now, what was or who was the first figure that, in your opinion, made you realize that, you know what, I think this is exactly what I want to be? Was it Mr. Jackson?
I used to listen to the recordings of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and a lot of that's formed into me. You go in pictures in my office, you would see both of them up. I call them War and Peace. That's two sides of my personality. Right. And they had great influence on me. I always was a bookworm. I started reading when I was 2, and I absorbed books even to this day, and all my children do the same. And so, but Mr. Freeman in the 10th grade was an African-American teacher who went to Howard University, which I later went to Howard because of him, his influence. I had never heard a black man talk Shakespeare and talk this type of proper English and dignity, bow ties, and walk the way he walked the earth. And I was smitten by just, seeing this excellence. Right. And so I wanted to kind of be like him. In fact, I tried to take him home and marry my mama. I thought he was. Right. But, Mr. Freeman influenced me and opened up even more books and, and talked about Black excellence. And then I got exposed to it at Howard University and then into the Air Force. But I didn't stay at Howard. I left Howard early because I wasn't academically performing. I was marching. The National Organization of Black University College Students. I was marching against, the Klan, and marching all over the place and fighting, marginalization and oppression. Right. And so eventually that bud of the homeland kind of gets back to your core. How did that happen? My mother was telling me when I was going to Angola in 2019, my mother was telling me I had been talking about Africa since I, started reading. I used to put all the maps out and want to know where I was from and who are my people and so forth. So there's always been a hunger to know who I am, especially when you're around, racism at the level that we was in as Black Panthers, and then in the Nation of Islam, and then but I later went in the Air Force, which was an antithesis to everything that I was learning. But it helped me to deal with some of the inner struggles that I had as a young man, and the anger that I had and the frustration. But I wanted to help my people, and so I made a decision that that's where my life was going to go, and I was going to use every part of my experience to try to lift up my people.
Okay.
But I need to find out who's my people.
There you go. But and on that note, let's kind of take a very quick break and kind of see if we can run a few images of anything related to Angola. We'll be back in a few minutes. And if you have just joined us, you are now tuned into Diaspora Central. And our guest today, it's Mr. Melvin Maxwell.
Elenco. Perfeito. Elenco figura perfeita. Dança. Você quer do gueto. Você quer do gueto, não fica parado com ele dançar. Segura da banda com mais uma dança, qual é o toque? Você quer do gueto, não fica parado com ele dançar. Segura da banda com mais uma dança, qual é o toque? Olha do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Dança do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Olha do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Dança do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Aqui ninguém fica, nós vamos do ponto coco bem elaborado. A dança que mexe contigo, quem já aprender espera sentado. Se talvez confuso, elencos, figuras da banda representa um laço de amigos. Criamos um belo grupo para nova dança do ponto coco. Como tenho dito sempre, me vejo na fortaleza com eles, estou sempre passo a passo. Qual é o couro? Ponto coco. Quem tem boca fala o que quer, quem tem ouvido acho que não quer. Portanto hoje é minha vez. Só são 2 dias, mas disse na trajetória de que plata também na marimba. Luana minha capital e me belas da minha família. Quando chega daqui nós vemos juntos, vamos ao além fronteira. Cabina com nada no povo do ponto coco, esse é mais um gol. Esse é mais um gol. Você quer do gato, não fica parado com ele dançar. Segura da banda com mais uma dança, qual é o toque? Você quer do gato, não fica parado com ele dançar. Segura da banda com mais uma dança, qual é o toque? Olha do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Dança do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Olha do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Dança do ponto coco, do ponto coco, do ponto coco. Vamos que vamos, já ninguém fica. Do ponto coco já está na via. Novo beat que é de secura. Este elenco está na bravura. SBV então grita rei. Vamos que vamos, já ninguém fica. Pode ficar se não queres beber. Muita lata, muita gasosa, tá no limão. Isso é Angola. Cala bem que pro saboroso. A DJ da desce, mete me costa. Puto pequeno no beat toca. É cultura estranguladores. Este elenco não causa dores. Água salopa sempre no peito.
And we are back. If you have just joined us, you are now tuned into Diaspora Central with Gil Ingles. And on this spotlight, our guest is Mr. Melvin Maxwell, an entrepreneur, a pastor, a motivation to the community. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is definitely a force to reckon with. Mr. Melvin Maxwell, welcome to Diaspora Central.
So glad to be here, Gil.
No, definitely a pleasure, and much respect, not only for you carrying yourself the way you do and being that example to the community, because that is much needed. So,
amen. Thank you.
Indeed. Now, as you joined the military, how many years did you serve for?
I served 8 years in the Air Force in contracting. That's where I learned the basis of contracting. In high school, I learned a lot about business law and accounting, but the Air Force is when I learned about procurement cycles. And I became an expert in procurement and contracting, writing them, the law, as well as bidding on them and preparing proposals from $100,000 to several $1 billion.
Right. And for that, actually, thank you for your service to this great country of ours.
You're welcome.
Indeed. So you live.
And my wife is also a veteran, and she did 30 years.
Oh, all right. Please, if you can also give her our thanks for being part of for serving the country.
Yes.
Indeed. Now, as you sitting out there, and at that point, you basically thinking, okay, eventually, once I leave the military, I'm going to have to do something. Did you then know that the thing that you were going to need to do was go into Africa, or what exactly was your plan?
My plan was getting my mother out of the projects, which was a burning desire to get her in a safe zone, because there was lots of gunfire over my mother's houses into the house,
right?
And getting her to a safe place. So entrepreneurship is what I learned, in high school. I learned it and really I had my first business at 8 years old. So I had been doing business at at large levels as a young man, and I've always been in business. I've
Right.
always had multiple revenue streams.
Yeah. Wow.
I have a total of 7 businesses right now.
Yeah.
4 of which are in Africa, and 3 that's here in the States. And so I've always believed in multiple revenue streams. I teach it in my church. I teach it to my community, diversification, how critical that is to be able to endure difficult days that always come. There's a cycle of famine, good times and bad times, and you got to be prepared to deal with it.
Indeed. Now, that's one of the things, because as you know, born and raised in the United States of America, mom and dad also both born and raised in the United States of America. At some point, I mean, doing business in Africa, it wouldn't just kind of come up, right? It had to be, something had to kind of sort of expose you to it, or was it a situation where you just took a vacation and then all of a sudden you came back, or you just kind of take us through that path of identifying the opportunity and then going in for it?
Well, as an empowering pastor, a brother from Congo named Adrian Nyukahama had came to my church that I was working at as a youth pastor at the time. And Adrian needed help just, finding his space in the United States. He had been an educator, PhD in anthropology. He also was a pastor. And so I kind of took him in and became my brother, lived with us and stayed with us and empowered with us. But Adrian also exposed me, because he wanted to build immigrant churches from a lot of the brothers and sisters coming over from overseas.
Gotcha.
So I had the financial capacity to help plant churches. So I planted about 4 or 5 immigrant churches in the DC, Baltimore area.
Okay.
And we would bring brothers and sisters from Congo, Angola, and different places. And so that experience of working with him and helping and serving a lot of our brothers and sisters who wanted to transition to America, seeking a better life, stirred so much in me to want to know what was the other side, where you're coming from.
Right.
And so I wanted to see it. And so in 2019, he presented an opportunity to go to Angola at the invitation of Bishop Alfonso Nunes of the Tokus Church, which is the indigenous church of Angola.
Yes, yes.
And it's also I call it the Revolutionary Church of Angola.
Right.
And Simeon Toko. And so I was on television in Angola talking about the comparison between Simeon Toko and Martin Luther King.
Right.
And it set off a lot of conversations. They put me on TV, and I was going around doing empowerment speeches that we don't need everybody else. We need each other.
Right.
The old FUBU, for us, by us.
Indeed.
We have everything we need.
Yeah.
And then I started making presentations to the government about why we have everything we need, about the wealth that they had in the ground.
Right. No, which is and a lot of people don't know. I believe that Simon Toko is primarily based on the northern part of Angola, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so which now raises another topic of good conversation here, because how was your experience the first time you set foot in Angola, in Africa? Let's kind of go over that. First of all, I guess, what were your expectations going, and what was it that you encountered? And let's go through those wow moments, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things I had to get over all the, myths and lies and systemic projections of pictures that was drawn about Africa. And it takes courage. You got to be courageous to do that, and not just digest it. And so I always was a critical thinker. And so not that those fears were not behind me, my mind, because there was always a separation that African Americans are not welcome in Africa. That's the thing they could communicate in our communities. And those are lies. And so when I got on the ground in Angola, it was like a magnet pulled me through the ground. It was like home. Right. I felt a connection. I've been all over the world. I never felt this connection.
Right.
It's like I discovered my personhood at a whole nother level. It was the ground and the earth called me,
right,
and pulled on me. So I fell to the ground and I wept.
Wow.
I just wept there. And outside of the airplane was thousands of people.
Right.
waiting to see us. They had instruments and all this, and it was this welcome home. It was the year of return, 2019.
Right.
It was 400 years from that time, that date.
Indeed.
That the first ship 1619 arrived in Virginia with Angolans on it.
Jamestown.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I didn't know the numbers. Now that I know the numbers of Angolans that were, put in slavery is enormous amount.
Indeed.
And so that had an impact on me in itself. Mm-hmm. And, doing your own African history and going to do your DNA tests and so forth, and you trace it back to Angola and Ghana and some other places. But yeah, that I felt I was at home for the first time in my life.
There you go. And once you arrived and you got there and everything was good, what was the first thing that made you feel like, wow, this is amazing? Or what was your first wow? I mean,
the wow moment was a woman who was about 104 years old, walked up to me right at the tarmac of the airport and put her hands on my face and said in Portuguese, "We've been looking for you for 400 years."
Wow. Yeah,
that was a weeping moment. That was a broken, and they were beating their chest like this. Yeah. And they were saying their babies have been missing. Right. And that we don't understand how many Angolans were taken into the Atlantic slave trade. Yeah. More than any nation, quite frankly, if we look at the data. Yeah. But they went through, the gates of Ghana and Sierra Leone and other places. They came up north and was distributed all over the world. Yeah. And really that population has not really been ever replenished. Indeed. And so I fell in love with my people and culture. But I also learned that, what we experience in America, that, the president of Angola just came to America recently and went to the African-American Museum, and I saw his comments. He came out weeping. Right. And so, but I wept as I learned the story of what, Portugal had done to our people. Right. It was just as serious. And so the connection became even more tighter and more important to me. Indeed. And so I had an imperative right there. Yeah. And before I got off the plane, God had spoke to me and said, you've been trying to build a church, but I'm going to show you my church. And I didn't understand what he meant, but he was like, I'm going to show you your people. I'm going to show you the greater church. Yeah. And I did. I ran into an experience of love. I got an impartation spiritually that I never had. Right. I did many speeches and so forth. I didn't lose a lick of notes. It's like it was downloaded right there into my spirit to be able to impart it to the people. There you go. And then I got a call to move my ministry from a local parish ministry to nation building. Okay. And so that's where I'm at now, in the nation building ministry. Okay. Eventually, I'm going to decrease from my ministry here, and I'm going to be building the African nations and the African diaspora. There you go. All right. And on that note, let's kind of go into a break, because when we get back, we want to talk about that and also about your entrepreneurial efforts in Africa. And we are back. If you have just joined us, you're now tuned into Diaspora Central with Gil Ingles and my magnificent, very important, definitely inspirational and visionary guest, Melvin Maxwell, Mr. Maxwell. It's good to be here, Gil. Sir, I will tell you one thing. One of my best friends and business partner, we put together a business. We were young, straight out of high school, and I was going to college. And he's I believe a couple of years older than me, so he was already out of. He was already out of college while I was still in school. But anyway, we put together this production company that eventually became an entertainment company. This is the company, if you have visited Angola, is the company that actually worked on the initial works of artists like Anselmo Ralph, Irina França. We did later on, we were the ones who actually did the solo album of the artist Paul G. From the group SSP. So we were blessed enough to work in this is just in Angola, because throughout Africa we have worked with several other artists also well known
in the continent, or especially in their countries, Ghana, Ethiopia,
Yes.
Kenya, and so forth.
Well, you're right up my lane because my daughter is a major artist in the States, and I'm taking her to Africa to write music and to really expand herself.
Definitely. Yeah, if there is anything that we can do to assist on whatever you need, we'll definitely be willing to assist on whatever necessary. But in 2010, we went to Ethiopia, and it is interesting because from the time I met him, when we started doing the showcases, I used to always request that we did something African. We do African art in the lobby, or have one or two African songs play before the show started, and sometimes even showcase one or two African artists. Always we attempted to include something of Africa in the showcases, and just to kind of help that translation from both ways, really. One, from the Africans who are here in the diaspora to understand that, okay, it's okay to cross over, and vice versa, and for the Africans who have been here in the diaspora and to say that, okay, it is okay to understand Africa, and this is how you can do it. So we're trying to create that medium without any scientific plans, none whatsoever. We're just doing. So
that's right. Doing it.
In 2010, we went to Ethiopia, and this brother landed in Ethiopia, and he has been in Africa more than I have since then. He's actually done something similar to what you're doing, which is opening businesses in Africa, doing business in Africa, trying to help Africa move forward, and move forward with the right forces also, with the right intentions, because sometimes African is being misled by the ones who have come through, because their intentions were entirely different, because in all honesty, they had no equity on what Africa was.
That's right.
Right. Getting the resources was their purpose, not the equity of what was going to be left behind. That was never the intention. But it's a different thing with this new generation of individuals, because that need, that pull, that magnet that you mentioned, that pulled you once you got off the plane and pulled you down to the ground, that whipping, it's something real.
That's right.
Right. From your perspective, as you sit there, and I know that you hear the same misinformation, disinformation that sometimes is passed on, especially on mainstream media, regarding Africa and the opportunities in Africa. What was your process of filtering that information and making the decision that, you know what, this is exactly where I need to become prosper?
Right. To do business, it takes courage, and it takes somewhat of a bluntness and expectation. And once I put my feet on the ground in Africa, I already knew the data. 1.4 billion. Some say even more than that. If we do the counting, it'd probably be about 1.6. Right. Customers, if you will. You have now the Intercontinental Trade Agreement. I knew about that was coming. Yeah. That means exchange between all African nations for the first time. That opens another level of capitalism and democracy that cannot be even measured. Then also the one passport. Once that opens up, where you can take if you got one African passport, you can go to all 54 nations.
Right.
Very easily. That's going to be transformational.
Indeed.
So it is an incubator that calls for, business. If you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't take you that much time to extrapolate and say, okay, opportunity is here.
Right.
Despite, areas of poverty, because we have that here in America,
right.
Despite corruption, despite all the challenges, if you know the history, you know that we here in America as African Americans, as well as our brothers in Africa, has been under systemic oppression.
Right.
We had to fight uphill all the way. And even in Africa, when it's our land, right. Our minerals, our property, all that, we still had to fight.
Indeed.
So now we're in a new season where, those who oppressed us cannot continue to divide us with war.
Right.
Because they need Africa for the new economy.
Right. Indeed.
And with that in mind, I saw opportunity. It's like, how can I be an asset versus a liability to my motherland? How can I help lift her up? And how can I leverage everything that I see? And immediately I knew right now that I need to focus in on the mineral health of the country to be able to leverage it to return back the money from the minerals back to the people, to build roads, highways, infrastructure, smart cities, digital cities, Wakanda cities, call them what you want, to build it all.
Yeah.
And we have the wealth to do it. It's just now change the paradigm from taking and robbing our nation, taking it out and strengthening other nations like France and all of them, who takes $500 billion a year out of African nations. But now give it back to our own selves, because we can do it for ourselves. We just got to turn it around.
Indeed. Now, as a man of the cloth, of course, the miseducation that Africa has suffered is probably something that, and I know that you encountering that, and you have to battle that on a daily basis, right? Yeah. Because it's part of the corrective process. It's challenging. How are you dealing with that approach? With that?
Well, I mean, I'm part of the Progressive Baptist Church that Martin Luther King started, which speaks truth to power.
Okay.
We have a unapologetic responsibility to lift our people and to give them, truth as well, with no chaser, and give them the information they need to be able to become, the best version of themselves. We know even in Africa, there's a lot of systemic oppression even going on right now. But we now have a more control over our land, over our minerals, over our oil, over our resources. And so we're the only continent that has a crust of water under it. And so in about another 30 years, Africa is going to feed about 50% of the world, based on the data from the Department of Agriculture of the United States of America in 2017. And so, a person who reads like me, I study all the information, and I knew that, what I do in contracting, I bring people together and negotiate with governments. I negotiate with people and find common ground, and then try to leverage the resources to help the people.
Right. Now, one of the things that I'm sure that you probably encountered were some of the, let's call them, I guess, cultural shocks. Which one of those was one that you were like, okay, that's kind of different?
The cultural shock that was greatest for me was language.
There you go.
It was,
Are you picking up Portuguese now?
Yeah, I take Portuguese lessons, when I'm in Angola. I have a young man who's about 23 years old.
Okay, you can mention his name if you want to. You can plug him.
His name is Fernando, and he teaches all my staff Portuguese at 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Monday through Friday.
There you go. So now you mentioned something important here. You mentioned all your staff, which means that you are not the only one who went. You have actually taken also a team with you who is also making Angola their home.
Yeah, I went initially with a team of intellectuals from the DC area, from the government, to deal with health, education, theology and churches. And I was on the economics and theology team.
Okay.
But I was only going to talk one time, but the person who Congress appointed as the president for the year of return, wife got sick and had to get off the aircraft.
Oh, wow.
And while we were up 38,000 miles, everybody came to the back and said, well, Maxwell, you're going to be the spokesman for our group. And so when we hit the ground, you do all the interviews, and you're going to also have to do all his speeches. Right. And I'm like, what is he going to talk about? But that was a God moment because, I didn't write anything. I gave what my heart was, and I didn't know that it was being, seen around the nation and even outside of the borders of Congo. Right. And so they put security around me from the things I was saying and the things that are important, and the people were celebrating to a point where they created a song and started calling me the son of Toko.
There you go. That is Africa, because every story in Africa is told with a song.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yeah, every
Yes.
story, it's part of our nature. We people of African descent, we tell everything in a song. Our stories are told in songs.
Told the
That's
song.
that's
And that
why.
came right here to us as African
Indeed,
American. We learned the same thing, the story and song.
indeed.
But I was not ready for the number of languages, not only Portuguese,
Right.
Congo, which I
Yeah.
also study in
French.
that,
Yeah.
French,
Yeah.
and other native language and tribal languages.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yeah,
so,
Kikongo. You probably in the northern part, you're probably dealing with Kikongo, and that would go both Angola and parts of Congo also.
yeah. So the African brain is unusual because we're the only continent where most people have at least 3 to 5 languages.
Indeed. Now
So, that was a shock for me.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this question, and I just like to speculate sometimes. And do you believe that Africa at this point should start thinking about picking one official European language as the language of the entire continent? At this point, let's say English, maybe being already the business language that it is, would have become that, and maybe picking one African native language, let's say maybe Swahili, and make that the language for the entire continent? You think
Africa, that's what the African Union is talking about. Swahili, right. I think, has been chosen now.
Right.
From the data I got back from the African Union as the native African language. But I'm not sure if they landed on English finally, but they are talking about that.
Right.
I think that would be really apropos to leverage and position Africa as a continent.
Indeed.
Because we have barriers. You know, we've been divided. All the countries chopped us all up, divided us, and and languages are divided.
Right.
So we need bridges, and language is also a bridge.
Indeed, definitely. Now, from the business perspective, let's talk about some of the things that you are doing in Africa, and how is it that the diaspora can either learn from from what you are doing, or be inspired by what you are doing, so that they can also do the same. Tell us a bit about your companies and some of the things that the diaspora can also benefit from by either being here or maybe even going there, or what they can do. This is that inspirational time when we need to touch the masses.
Yeah, I'm the CEO of Golden Africa Holding Company, and a holding company basically holds multiple companies. Okay. And so one of the first things I did, and instead of just coming to build my company, is to find Angolan companies that have like-minded vision and that just need some assistance, not only financial, but intellectual assistance and resources. And so I found and located several of them, and I bought into them. I purchased shares with them, but kept the leadership in place and gave them resources so they can, fulfill their vision and their destiny. And so I think that's a better entrance way than just opening your business and starting it in there. I think a better entrance way, and that accelerated us, was by buying multiple businesses. So I bought 3 businesses in Angola, 1 in Rwanda, and we got several that we get ready to purchase in Ghana and a couple other nations.
Right. Now, a lot of people, and I speak from the perspective of, let's say, the micro businessman, or maybe the college student who's just graduated from school, who may probably have the idea of starting a business in Africa. He may think, oh my God, it takes millions to start a business. Why don't you tell that how much money would probably be enough for one to at least get their feet on the ground? And
Africa is the place. African soil is the best soil, and just if you put a seed in, it's going to produce something. And so you don't need $1 billion. I would say, you should go in to be there to sustain yourself and immerse yourself in the culture and learn the culture, because you need the culture milieu to be able to navigate business-wise in relationships. But once you do, you get on the ground, the American dollars, you coming from America, it has, it was about 596 today in Kwanzaa. It fluctuates. I had it up as high as 720. When I got there, it's a little bit lower. It goes with the price of oil. But in Rwanda, it's $1 to $1,000. So I brought a mining company in Rwanda for about $30,000. And this is a sample. I spent $30,000. I got a building on the land. I got 1,600 acres you know, which is really 800 hectares of land.
Yeah.
And in that land, I have tungsten, tin, and tantalum, the 3 T's.
Right.
All of which is necessary for your phone
for technology, right?
And digital technology. Now, the amount of tantalum, I won't give all the numbers because it scares some of you out there.
Right.
But you know, tantalum was at $60 a kilogram. It's now around $390 a kilogram.
Ooh.
In 2008, it got up to $600 a kilogram. I have tons of it. I'm talking about thousands and maybe even millions of tons of tantalum and others. Right. So the value of $30,000 in that job is multi-millions and really is billions of dollars. Indeed. If you're willing to invest it. So we spend money here in DC and get a house for $325,000 to $500,000. Right. They can get that same house for $100,000 and more land and more capacity in Africa.
Right.
And I was telling all the young people in my congregation, spend your money in Africa, get a piece of land, get a house, because you can grow everything you want. You can eat off the land. You can go. I mean, I walked over to the river and pulled out a fish bigger than me, you know, put it on the grill and cook it.
Right.
And so that was the first time I ate off the land, with, you know, with the Tokish church. They did it right there. They took everything off the trees and the bushes and the sea, and they cooked up for hundreds of people right there in front of me. And I was like, oh my God.
Right.
You know, so we have so much to learn about Africa as African Americans. Yeah. But it's rich.
Indeed.
Everything that the human body needs from medicine. So I'm into natural health.
Right.
I found, you know, doctors who heal everything. I brought a lot of it back from congregant members who were very sick, who are now healed. Right. From the herbs, from the trees, and that's, you know, that's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, not to cut you off, that's also something that I kind of want to touch a little bit. Herbal medicine in Africa has always been very advanced, to the point that, in all honesty, that had given a leg up to the Portuguese back in colonial times. Because what the Portuguese did was they would go to Angola, Africa, take the herbs, bring it back to Portugal, process them, and then take them back to Africa and resell them as processed products, right, for the extracts and everything else that they needed. But that approach right there, it's something very important, because as we start to face now these world pandemics and viral diseases that sometimes we don't quite understand where they get started or how they get started, whether they are experimentations or they have just already been lingering there. But we all know that immunity of the body, it's very important. Of course, as a pastor, as a pastor, immunity of the soul is also very important. But speaking on the immunity of the body, how was that experience? Was that something that you were already exposed to here in the States prior to going, or something that you started to experience once you arrived there?
I had I have a Chinese doctor who, you know, do acupuncture, Chinese herbs, but I found that all the herbs she was giving me comes from Africa. I didn't know that it has Chinese labels on it, but everything comes from Africa. Yeah. You know, moringa, you know, baluka tea, all the things that I drink and now was coming from Africa. So Chinese medicine could not be without Africa. China does have some good stuff of its own, but it does not compare to what, you know, Africa like in Angola. I can just grab right outside the marginal. I grab the moringa and I eat it. One or two moringas, my partners both had high blood pressure. They have no high blood pressure now. They only been there 9 months, and they take moringa to drink some yellow grass tea or baluka, and boom, they have no high blood pressure. They all lost all that weight. Their stomach is cleansed. Their colon is clean. Their blood is circulating. It's a whole different life. And we really need to package that and bring it back, because African Americans you know, have health disparities, as we found out through COVID-19. And by the way, COVID-19 has been in existence when I was in the Air Force in 1980. So it ain't new. But nevertheless, in Africa and Angola, the COVID cases of 65,000 COVID cases, 63,000 were healed, and we only had about 1,900 deaths. The doctor that's healing them is my doctor in Angola. And so he he has herbs that coats the lung system and respiratory system to the point where the president, Lorenko, said, let's put his stuff in the pharmacies.
Right. So then, which is something very good, because the reinforcement, I believe, that sometimes comes also from the diaspora, which is the point that I want to make. The importance of the diaspora has to play in the home continent is really to reinforce the quality things, because once it gets reinforced, then the people then start to understand that, okay, this is really important. So herbal medicine, it's something important. And you mentioned something, packaging and commercializing. I'm saying commercializing. You mentioned simply packaging, right? Yeah. That process, is it something that you also thinking about moving forward? I mean, now I'm even trying
we immediately met with him, and we went to his laboratory. We looked at what he was doing, and we invested in first, upgrading his laboratory, giving him more resources to do that. But second is to convert some of it to make it to be distributed. So we gave him, I'm a engineer again, how to convert it into a powder. Instead of taking it in liquid, it's hard to transport. So let's convert it into a powder, and when it hits the water, it has the same impact. We don't lose no power, none of it.
So the extract remains the same.
That's right. Indeed. And we can heal diabetes. We can heal all the things that African Americans and really Americans period are faced with. Not just maintain disease, but heal disease.
Indeed.
That's the
not a remedy, a cure.
That's right, a cure.
Yeah.
Cure. So we want to do that and get that medicine into our communities and neighborhoods, which systematically, food placement is there. That's bad food is given in our neighborhood. You have, 35 fast food joints and one Whole Food, 2,000 miles away. And so we have to systematically counter that and bring, what I want to bring is like you can go to a vending machine and based on your illness, just pull the herbs out, put it in at a very low cost. Take this, take this, take this. And you don't have to worry about these maladies and sicknesses. You can transform your body.
No, definitely a great move. Now, I know that you are a very busy man, and we love talking to you, and we can probably talk all day, but we know that you have plenty of things to do. And for a man who's spends most of his time in Africa, or throughout the world, I should say, being at home right now is probably very valuable time. So we don't want to rob much of your time, but I kind of want to give you an opportunity for you to give a shout out and anything of inspiration that you can give that our audience can probably appreciate for you, and if anything that they can do to also help your business grow here in the diaspora, or vice versa, we open. So the floor is yours.
Well, I want to invite the diaspora and many who have not come home to come back, to bring the skill sets, the education, the systems of knowledge and so forth, and bring it back. Every country in Africa that I've been to all said the same thing. They expect the diaspora to come back because this is, again, a seminal moment in history for Africa. And we can do more with our African dream than we can do with an American dream. But I would say to you that, be global in scope, have a business in America if you're there, but also come back and invest and build businesses, because entrepreneurs bring solutions. And as I shared at the conference, the world has been disrupted. Every system, the way we in operations and way we should do things has been disrupted, and it's going to continue to be disrupted. Technology is an intervention, but entrepreneurs are the ones who really are the leaders of the world when it comes to solution-based things to try to change the world. And so anybody who has an entrepreneurial heart, if you don't have a seed in Africa, you're making the biggest mistake in your life.
Indeed.
Because the soil of Africa can multiply 4 times to 400 times exponentially faster than any place in the world. But you got to be patient, and you got to be vigilant, and you got to be determined. But there's so much opportunity for everything. Like in the business you are in entertainment.
Yes, sir.
The world of entertainment is huge. That's a part of some things that we're going to be doing. There's opportunity to be able to be the Motown of Africa.
There you go. Indeed. Yeah, a lot of content creators out there, and very few of them actually have the opportunity to reap the revenues of what they create.
That's right.
That's actually one of the issues that we have encountered. Yes, sir. And eventually, maybe you and I, we can probably sit down and talk about this in a more serious manner, because it's one of the areas in which we starting to move into.
But we got to control it. Cradle to grave.
Indeed, yeah.
The whole process.
Indeed, rewriting that narrative is definitely necessary. Now, for social media purposes, where could they find more information about not only your ministry, but also your businesses, if necessary? If there are young men who are right now driven, they like, you know what, I've been here long enough, I've done what I need to do, I need to go work with someone who's doing this and that in the motherland. Where can they go and get in touch with you for employment opportunities and prosperity opportunities? I like to say, I don't like to say employment, because employment has a meaning that is not proper. But I talk about prosperity opportunities, because when you think of prosperity, you go with the purpose of learning so that you can use what you're learning for your future.
Yeah, they can go right to our website, www.goldenafricaholdings.com, and they can see the contact information. We also have a Golden Africa Holdings Facebook account and a LinkedIn, but I actually try to stay under the radar as much as possible.
Totally understood.
Because I've learned in business, the more you put out there, the more attacked you are.
Yes.
And sometimes, in this time of everybody see everything,
indeed,
I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't like to let people see me coming.
There you go.
By the time they do see me, it's too late.
Strategic.
That's right.
Yeah, strategy is everything when it comes to everything, right? I think LL Cool J used that analogy at one point. He basically said, you know what, when someone is conceiving a baby, they don't open up the womb and say, oh, look at my baby, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you can.
But don't let your dream and vision get out prematurely.
Right.
You got to be like a stealth in business first. Establish yourself, get your infrastructure, grow, get the stability, so you can take on the lions that's going to come at you.
Right, because they will come, because they paying attention.
Yes,
and now on the lighter note, and as you know, Angola is the home of Kizomba and Kuduro. Have you learned how to dance Kizomba yet? Have you tried?
Yes. I'm learning more and more each day.
Yeah. So you got the pasadas down. You're getting the pasadas down.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Now, one more question. Do you believe? I say this. I am the guy who started that thing that now many other people also using, which they say that, you know what, Kizomba is the dance that helps you determine who your true partner is. Because if they can follow you on the dance floor and you can follow them, because a lot of people think, oh no, it's only the man leads. No. The man only leads when she allows you to lead.
That's right.
And the game is really to be able to manage that and still make the outside world look at you both as wow. Right. Exactly.
As one.
Exactly. Look at how well they manage. So I am one of those believers that whoever you can have a beautiful Kizomba dance with most likely would make a great partner for you. Do you believe that in our communities here in the diaspora, we probably need more Kizomba schools? And if so, is that something that you are that you think that would prosper? And this is just you giving your business
in New York City, when we were growing up in New York City, they call it the hustle.
Okay.
You grab your partner and you turn and you move.
Indeed.
African flavor, Latin flavor, all mixed up.
Right.
So me and my wife danced that way.
Okay. So you already had the rhythm going.
I had the rhythm. I can go. It's just learning all the steps and everything. Yeah. But I do believe that there's a sacred oneness as in the mysterium, is in the spiritual world that we don't really understand.
Yeah. And
you can discover your queen or your king through dance. And we need to have that type of cooperative, unified movement in our families. Yeah. And so if you can find a dance partner that move with the same rhythm and cadence and same strokes of movement, you're probably getting close to that soulmate, and you can find that soulmate. You can walk in agreement in the earth and do anything. You become unstoppable.
Indeed.
So yeah, schools like that would be outstanding.
Indeed, definitely. Hey, Mr. Melvin Maxwell, it's been a great pleasure. Hopefully you come back, and I'm actually, I'll be honest with you, my mind is already sitting out here thinking I need to, I've been thinking about creating some sort of an inspirational portion of the show that would pass every so often and invite individuals such as yourself to come in and give their inspirational portion. So please don't be mad at me if I contact you again to do a very brief one. I appreciate it.
I try to make deposits into people and to make sure we get the word out there, what we're trying to do, and any way we can uplift our people, I'm there.
All right. Thank you very much, because consider Diaspora Central home for you. If there is anything pertaining to anything that has to do with you, do not hesitate to send it to us. We will be more than glad to showcase it to the world, because after all, this is what we are here for. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Gil.
If you don't have anything else to add, I just want to say.
No, I can talk all day, so you would never get me off here. So I gotta let you off the hook.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But eventually we'll catch up. And I don't know if you know, DC is really home for me.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
I see the 202 in your number.
Indeed. It's 30 years in that area, so DC is really home for me. So it's just amazing, right? It's like we both were right in the same city, in the same area, and we met somewhere else, and yet now it's the world, right?
And I used to live in Texas. I went in the military. I was in Texas.
Oh wow, look at that!
Whole world. Mm-hmm.
No, definitely. But it's been a great pleasure. I definitely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, and I can just say, let's stay safe.
Yep.
All right.
Continue to lift up Christ throughout the world. Indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. And for all those of you that took time out of your schedules to listen to this program, I want you to have something in mind as we log off. I want you to keep in mind that at the end of the day, you have to find a home. You can't fly forever. You can't stay on the air forever. Eventually, you're going to have to land, and where you land, you will have to make it a home. I am not saying specifically that going or being out there in the diaspora, in the continent is where you need to be, or that staying here in the diaspora is where you need to be. No, all that I'm saying is consider all your options and consider them seriously, because there are great opportunities in the continent that you may not be aware of. As always, follow your dreams, live your dreams, and not anybody else's nightmare. Until next time, peace.
Peace.
Muita paz, muito contente. Caso curto,